Welcome to our exploration of one of the most influential works in Islamic philosophy, The Incoherence of the Philosophers, by Al-Ghazali. Born in 1058 in Tus, Persia, Al-Ghazali was a pivotal Islamic theologian, philosopher, and mystic whose impact resonates through Islamic thought to this day. In this review, we dive into Al-Ghazali's critical examination of the philosophical ideas of his time. The Incoherence of the Philosophers, translated by Michael E. Marmora and published in 2000, challenges the prevailing philosophical currents influenced by Aristotle, particularly the works of Avicenna and Al-Farabi. Al-Ghazali critiques 20 specific philosophical points, focusing on their compatibility with Islamic teachings. His method is not just rejection, but a deep philosophical engagement aiming to reconcile faith and reason. This work sparked significant debates, leading to responses such as The Incoherence of the Incoherence by Ibn Rushd, who known as Averroes in the West. Join us as we explore the key themes, arguments, and the lasting impact of Al-Ghazali's work on Islamic philosophy and beyond. In our exploration into Al-Ghazali's work, we dive into the vibrant intellectual landscape of the 11th and 12th centuries. This was a period marked by a profound engagement with Greek philosophy, driven by translations and commentaries that brought the works of Aristotle, Plato, and others into the Islamic scholarly tradition. Prominent philosophers like Avicenna and Al-Farabi attempted to reconcile these ancient philosophies with Islamic teachings, sparking debates that reached the core of Islamic thought. Al-Ghazali found himself in the midst of this intellectual ferment. He observed that while the integration of Aristotelian philosophy enriched Islamic thought, it also introduced concepts that conflicted with fundamental Islamic beliefs. The eternity of the world, the nature of divine knowledge, and the denial of bodily resurrection were among the controversial issues. According to Al-Ghazali, these philosophical speculations threatened the fabric of Islamic faith, leading believers into confusion and misguidance. The Incoherence of the Philosophers was Al-Ghazali's response to this challenge. It wasn't merely a dismissal of philosophy, but a nuanced critique aimed at delineating the boundaries of philosophical inquiry within Islam. Al-Ghazali argued for the primacy of revelation over reason, asserting that true knowledge comes from divine insight rather than human speculation. This standpoint reinvigorated the discourse on the balance between faith and reason in Islamic thought. Al-Ghazali's work underscored a pivotal moment in Islamic intellectual history, questioning the unbridled assimilation of Aristotelian thought into Islamic theology. His critique set the stage for further debates, notably inviting a counter-response from Ibn Rushd, who defended the compatibility of philosophy and Islam. Through this intellectual exchange, Al-Ghazali not only highlighted the tensions between faith and reason, but also fostered a deeper reflection on their interplay within the quest for truth. In The Incoherence, Al-Ghazali embarks on a systematic critique of philosophical doctrines that diverged from Islamic teachings, focusing particularly on the works of Avicenna and Al-Farabi. His critique centers around three main areas: the nature of God, the universe, and the human soul. Through 20 discussions, Al-Ghazali dissects and disputes the philosophical views that he argues are not only incompatible with Islamic doctrine, but are also internally inconsistent. The nature of God and the universe. One of the most contentious issues Al-Ghazali addresses is the philosopher's assertion of the world's eternity, which directly contradicts the Islamic view of a created universe. Al-Ghazali argues that this notion undermines the omnipotence of God by suggesting that the universe exists independently of divine will. He refutes the philosophers' arguments for the world's eternity using both theological insights and logical analysis, emphasizing that the universe's existence is contingent upon God's creative act. Al-Ghazali also challenges the philosophers' denial of God's knowledge of particulars. According to philosophers like Avicenna, God only knows universal truths, not the specifics of individual occurrences. Al-Ghazali counters this by affirming that God's omniscience encompasses all aspects of creation, including every minute detail of the universe and human affairs. The human soul. Another critical area of dispute is the nature of the human soul. Philosophers argued for the soul's pre-eternity and its independence from the body, conclusions that Al-Ghazali claims contradict the Islamic teachings on resurrection and the afterlife. He scrutinizes the philosophical arguments for the soul's immateriality and eternal nature, demonstrating that they fail to provide a convincing case against the bodily resurrection promised in Islam. Al-Ghazali does not outright reject the use of logic or deny the value of philosophical inquiry. Instead, he contends that philosophy's scope is limited and that it must be applied within the framework of Islamic revelation. He argues that true knowledge comes from divine insight and spiritual experience, which surpass the reach of human reason alone. This perspective does not only critique the philosopher's reliance on rationality, but also elevates the role of mysticism and spiritual understanding in grasping the divine. In the Incoherence, Al-Ghazali embarks on a critical examination of the philosophical doctrines that contradicted Islamic teachings, particularly focusing on the ideas of Avicenna and Al-Farabi. He meticulously addresses various topics, but zeroes in on three pivotal arguments: the pre-eternity of the universe, God's knowledge of particulars, and the concept of bodily resurrection. Drawing directly from Al-Ghazali's text, we delve into his critique of these philosophical positions: the pre-eternity of the universe. Al-Ghazali challenges the philosopher's assertion that the universe has always existed alongside God, which he argues diminishes God's omnipotence and contradicts the Islamic view of creation. Their saying that the world is eternal and has no beginning is disbelief in God's power to originate the world in time. It is also an assertion that time is eternal and has no beginning, which likewise is disbelief in God's power to create it. Discussion 1. This statement underscores Al-Ghazali's argument against the notion of the universe's pre-eternity, advocating instead for a creation that affirms divine will and power. God's knowledge of particulars. Al-Ghazali refutes the philosopher's limited conception of God's knowledge, asserting that it undermines the comprehensive omniscience attributed to God in Islam. They assert that God, may he be exalted, does not know the particularities. Our intention in this discussion is to make it clear that their words lead necessarily to denying God's knowledge of particularities, which is unbelief. Discussion 13. Here, Al-Ghazali emphasizes the contradiction in denying God's knowledge of particulars, a stance he views as tantamount to disbelief. Bodily resurrection. On the issue of bodily resurrection, Al-Ghazali confronts the philosophical denial rooted in their understanding of the soul's nature. He highlights this denial as a departure from Islamic eschatology. The most bizarre thing they mention regarding the soul is that it is neither a body nor an accident, and from this principle, they proceed to denying bodily resurrection. Discussion 18. Al-Ghazali's critique in this passage not only challenges the philosopher's view on the soul, but also reaffirms the Islamic teaching of the resurrection of both body and soul in the afterlife. In the Incoherence, Al-Ghazali not only critiques specific philosophical doctrines, but also offers profound insights into the nature of knowledge itself. His work navigates the complex relationship between logic, spiritual experience, and the pursuit of true understanding, particularly in the context of understanding the divine. Al-Ghazali acknowledges the importance of logic and reason in the acquisition of knowledge. However, he posits that these intellectual tools have limitations, especially when it comes to understanding the mysteries of the divine and the metaphysical aspects of existence. For Al-Ghazali, the ultimate knowledge of God transcends what can be attained through rational inquiry alone. He argues that spiritual experience, direct personal encounter with the divine, is an indispensable element in truly knowing God. This stance is evident in his critique of the philosophers' over-reliance on reason, where he demonstrates that their logical deductions about God, the universe, and the soul often lead to conclusions that are incompatible with Islamic teachings. Al-Ghazali advocates for a holistic approach to knowledge that encompasses both the intellectual and the spiritual. He suggests that true understanding comes from a combination of rational analysis, adherence to divine revelation, and personal spiritual experience. This synthesis allows for a deeper, more comprehensive grasp of the nature of God and the realities of existence beyond the surface level of material phenomena. In discussing the nature of God, Al-Ghazali emphasizes the limitations of human reason in fully comprehending the divine essence. He critiques the philosophers' attempts to circumscribe God's attributes within the bounds of human logic, arguing that such efforts invariably fall short of capturing the transcendent reality of God. Instead, Al-Ghazali points towards the necessity of revelation and mystic insight in approaching an understanding of the divine, suggesting that knowledge of God is ultimately rooted in faith and the transformative experience of God's presence. Al-Ghazali's The Incoherence of the Philosophers stands as a monumental work in Islamic philosophy, marking a significant turn in the intellectual discourse of the time. Its impact extended beyond the immediate debates with philosophers of his era, influencing the trajectory of Islamic thought and also resonating within Christian and Jewish scholastic circles. Challenging philosophy with theology. One of the most profound impacts of Al-Ghazali's work was its challenge to the philosophical community of his time, particularly those who sought to harmonize Islamic theology with Greek philosophy. By systematically refuting the arguments of philosophers like Avicenna and Al-Farabi on critical points of Islamic doctrine, Al-Ghazali not only defended Islamic orthodoxy, but also demonstrated the limits of philosophical reasoning in matters of faith. His critique led to a more cautious approach to philosophy within the Islamic tradition, emphasizing the supremacy of revelation and the necessity of prophetic guidance in understanding the divine. The response from Averroes. The impact of the incoherence of the philosophers elicited responses from several scholars, most notably from Ibn Rushd, Averroes, who wrote The Incoherence of the Incoherence as a direct rebuttal. Averroes defended the use of philosophy and rational thought in interpreting the Islamic faith, arguing that there was no inherent contradiction between reason and revelation. This dialogue between Al-Ghazali and Averroes represents a pivotal moment in Islamic intellectual history, highlighting the dynamic tension between faith and reason. Influence beyond Islamic thought. Al-Ghazali's work had a significant influence beyond the Islamic world. His skepticism towards Aristotelian philosophy and emphasis on mysticism found echoes in Christian Europe, where thinkers grappled with similar issues of faith and reason. The translation of his works into Latin during the Middle Ages introduced his ideas to a Western audience, contributing to the scholastic debates that would shape European philosophy. Legacy in Sufism and Islamic mysticism. Al-Ghazali's emphasis on personal spiritual experience and the inner dimensions of faith had a lasting impact on Sufism and Islamic mysticism. His work underscored the importance of personal transformation and the pursuit of a direct encounter with the divine, themes that would resonate deeply within the Sufi tradition. Al-Ghazali is often credited with integrating Sufism more fully into mainstream Islamic thought, balancing the external practices of religion with the internal journey of spiritual development. The journey through Al-Ghazali's The Incoherence of the Philosophers brings us to a reflective conclusion on the enduring relevance of his work in today's philosophical and religious landscape. Al-Ghazali's critique of the philosophical trends of his time and his deep dive into the nature of knowledge, existence, and divine comprehension offer timeless insights into the dialogue between faith and reason. Bridging faith and reason. Al-Ghazali's work remains a crucial reference point for understanding the balance between faith and reason. In an era where scientific inquiry and rational thought often seem at odds with religious belief, Al-Ghazali's approach offers a nuanced perspective that embraces both. His insistence on the importance of spiritual insight alongside rational analysis anticipates modern discussions about the limits of science and the place of spirituality in a rational world. Al-Ghazali's influence on modern thought. Al-Ghazali's influence extends beyond Islamic thought into broader philosophical and theological discussions worldwide. His critique of the philosophers and his subsequent embrace of Sufism have inspired scholars and spiritual seekers across cultures, pointing to the universal relevance of his quest for harmony between the inner life of the spirit and the outer world of experience. Final reflections. Al-Ghazali's contributions to philosophy and Islamic thought provide a rich resource for anyone grappling with the complexities of faith, knowledge, and existence in the contemporary world. His work serves as a reminder of the enduring need to seek wisdom in all its forms and to approach the divine mystery with both humility and curiosity. In a world increasingly fragmented by differing views on truth and knowledge, Al-Ghazali's synthesis of reason and faith offers a beacon of hope for dialogue and understanding across cultural and religious divides. As we conclude this exploration, we are reminded of the timeless nature of his questions and the enduring value of his intellectual legacy. His work continues to inspire and challenge, inviting us into an ongoing conversation about the deepest questions of life and the universe.